Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you can make more money in less time and especially have more fun. I have a special guest today, David Lupberger. David and I have known us for a long time,
It
like
is a
15,
long
20
time.
years,
Yeah.
whatever it is. He has a company called Contractor Exit Strategy. And I think we need to know we're not going to get out of this thing alive, right? The fundamental truth is we're all going to exit. We just don't know when, right? So this David's going to help everybody deal with a problem that we've all got. You may deny it, guys, and ladies, but we all got to exit sooner or later. So David, tell me a little about yourself and how you got into this.
Look, I'm a former building contractor, full service, did it for about over 25 years. So I'm very familiar with the clients I work with. And what I've discovered is I'll do, as you know, public programs. And as I'm in my 60s, look, I'm in the same transition path of, what does the next chapter look like? And at my programs, I'm asking these audiences of contractors, how are you planning for your transition? And I'm being met with silence. And they're just kind of looking at me like, well, I'm not leaving. And what you just said is, guess what? You will, hopefully on your terms, not somebody else's. And we've built businesses that have an amazing amount of goodwill. So reputation, history, client list, subcontractor, supplier relationships. And can I give you an interesting stat from Forbes magazine?
I'd love statistics.
All right. Forbes magazine said that due to what's called the silver tsunami, which is all of us baby boomers coming into retirement, that 250,000 businesses will be for sale by 2030. The unsettling stat is 80% of those businesses will never sell. So 200,000.
Well, I've had clients, I have one guy we've got out for, several million, I would say, but in most cases, people just close the door and leave.
They close the door and leave. They don't know what to do. And they think someone's going to buy their business. But let's talk about a remodeling company doing under 5 million in revenue in a year. Who's going to buy that business?
I mean, what's it worth? I mean, it's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it, right?
And who are the buyers? And so what I did is I held a workshop, which is the market. Less than 10% of remodeling companies, less than 10%, will sell in the open market. They're really not saleable. You don't have a large group of people looking to buy residential remodeling or construction companies. They just don't exist. So really your best buyer is a key employee or a family member. So then we went down that avenue, which is I can set up a plan where based on a performance-based bonus, I can grant future equity, not right now, but based on performance. After year 3, after year 4, I can grant equity to these key people where they demonstrate they have the ability to take over. And the SBA will actually acknowledge once that stock transfer takes place, they'll acknowledge that as a down payment. So I can show people how to access SBA financing to sell to a key employee or family member. And here's a third one that I wasn't even familiar with till 6 months ago, an employee-owned cooperative. And different all over the country.
Is that the same? That's an ESOP, right?
It's not an ESOP. Great question. An ESOP is very legally expensive. Usually companies over 10 million a year, because the original setup takes over $250,000.
Wow.
And it's a lot of
That's
legal
called,
requirements.
just for our listeners, it's called an employee stock option plan, right?
And it's made for larger companies. So the employee-owned cooperative is a simpler version. I've worked with somebody that has done this with his companies with as few as 3 employees. And you train these key employees who may have been with you 5, 10, 15 years to think like an owner, to read a balance sheet, to understand a profit and loss. So there's an educational program, but guess what? That's legacy. You're rewarding these key employees by giving them an opportunity to become owners of a company where they've really contributed to your success.
Now,
So
David, good question. There's a big I've had a lot of coaches. There's a big transition between, I'm going to call it a craftsman mentality, right? And an entrepreneur ownership. In fact, I talked to one guy who did not want to hire high talented craftsmen in an HVAC company, because he said they would go in, and if the HVAC system was totally disaster, they'd take pride in fixing up a system that should be thrown out, right? Because they're a craftsman.
Yeah.
So their values are entirely different from an entrepreneur. So how do you get people that are craftsmen to make the transition to entrepreneur? Because most times people take over the business, it fails.
What a great question. So I'm working with one of my clients here in Colorado. And once he understood the employee-owned cooperative, I got him on the phone with a gentleman who can help people understand how this works. And basically, my client's name is John. John understood, and he said, I'm going back to my company and I'm going to ask them, would you be interested in? Now, part of this gentleman who assists companies with doing this, there is literally a 2-year training program. And they assist owners with training key employees to begin understanding management. So he went back to, he said, I haven't been that nervous in years, because he said, if they said no, then they knew I'm trying to sell the company. And then what do I do? Because if I've told people I'm trying to sell the company, you have what's called flight risk. Now key employees are thinking he's going to sell. Should I be looking elsewhere? He brought the offer to his company. All 5 key employees said, we love it. We want in. Now we're coordinating with this program provider, and he's helping then implement this. So it literally is, depending on the skill set of your key employees, there's a training program, 18, 24 months. And they begin to think like an owner, because now they get 1 share in the company, 1 person, 1 share, 1 vote. They now have legacy, an opportunity to own the company. And this is what nationally states and governments are trying to say, we don't want to lose these small community-based businesses. So they're actually assisting contractors. And in Colorado will give an employer a grant to get a market valuation, as well as prepare a business plan. And they'll give tax credits to owners who follow this business model. And every state's a little different, but the local communities are really realizing how valuable these small businesses are. They're part of the community. So let's try to assist them, that when owners exit, the business can continue.
I know I've had several clients, as we know, in a recruiting company. And a lot of times, we recruit that person to come in who's capable of running the company. But I always say it's going to take, but the time you recruit them and you train them and trust them, it's going to be 5 years between that time and the time you sell the company to them.
Yeah. I usually tell people, if you're looking at some kind of transition, succession plan, 3 to 5 years, 3 minimum. Right. And then the other question is, do you want to commit that time? And the beauty of this is most owners do, because these key employees have gotten them where they are. They want to take care of their past clients, and they've got great relationships. Man, I just keep saying, don't just close your doors. There's value here.
Right. So either you can train your employees to do it or hire somebody in that can do it. But the idea that you're going to sell it to somebody else is remote.
It's less and less remote, because, and I could ask, if I'm on the phone and you're my contractor client, I can ask people, would you buy your business? What do you think most people say?
No way.
No way. And so how do we make this a transferable asset? And there's a transition plan. All right. You can approach this of beginning to delegate specific activities. You do this where you then find good people, you do assessments, put them in the right seats, and you can create a transition plan.
Right. But I would say, if you're going to transition in 5 years, you need to start working on it now.
It's the old, Michael Gerber, remember the book, The E-Myth?
Yeah.
You should always be building your business with the end in mind. And when I tell people I'm with Contractor Exit Strategy, the answer is, I'm not exiting. And you were perfect when you said, yes, you are. All right. We just don't know when.
So we don't know when, we don't know how, but we know it's going to happen.
You know it's going to happen. And part of exit planning is also something called the business continuity plan. And a continuity plan is if something happened to you or your spouse, a major accident or illness, have you created company redundancy where you or your spouse, that key people in the company, can step in because they know what to do? That's also part of this, is putting together a contingency plan due to accident or illness. And in the 30 some companies I've worked with, no one has had a contingency plan. Nobody. So it's like, let's plan for this graceful, profitable exit, but let's also plan for the unplanned, because guess what? In construction, does anything go according to plan?
Not usually.
Not usually. No. So we amend, we adjust. And that's the beauty of it. We can.
Okay. So there's what you're saying is the only viable option to get rid of your company is to either hire somebody to train to take it over or have your current employees train to take it over. But clearly, looking at you're going to sell it to somebody or just shut the doors. I mean, if you're willing to do that, that's fine too. So your options are close the doors and say, it's been fun, we're done. Or A, hire somebody to take it over and give them 5 years to get there and the right person, or train your current employees to pull it off. Those are your only three viable options, right?
Well, the fourth option where we started, which is you think you can sell on the open market, but the reality is very few companies sell on the open market. Construction companies are a unique operation. The owner is usually the heart and soul of the operation. Most construction companies are not saleable on the open market.
Right. And so you should just admit that. And if you're not willing to just close the doors and leave, you should look at another option.
And then do you make the commitment to this 3 to 5 year plan? And so some owners I've actually spoken with and said, here's what's involved. We're having a conversation like we are now, Paul. And they've literally said, I don't think I want to do that. And so that is also another choice, which is maximize your earnings and choose some exit point, letting people know, I will be closing. But it doesn't have to happen. But the reality is it does take some time and commitment to create this transition plan.
Now, I have seen some people sell their company to a competitor. They don't get much, but they want to either keep their employees or their clients happy because they feel this, they've been in business 20 years, they've got 20 years worth of clients. They feel a social or moral obligation for all the work they've done, not just abandoning all their clients and saying, not my problem anymore, right?
It's very true that you might find a friendly competitor, but in that instance, price is probably not primary. They're not going to offer what you think it's worth. So when we talk about finding a good person and training them, or an employee-owned cooperative, that's where you'll get the value, because you can then set and manage that value.
Well, I will tell you, I've been doing this business 50 years, and the only way I've successfully transitioned companies, I've done several, was to either bring somebody in and take 3 or 4 years to sell it to them, or have high quality people they've sold it to. And in that case, now let's say you have a $3 million company. I've got some numbers in my head. What is it worth to sell to the key employee or employees, or bring somebody in and sell to them?
So you have something called, you familiar with EBITDA?
Yep.
So basically,
the audience.
I'm going to make this really simple. Let's look at just net earnings after cost of goods sold, overhead, and owner's compensation. We arrive at some kind of net revenue. And so traditionally speaking, in construction, you may sell a company 3 to 4 times net revenue. Now, honestly, I've had people say, I could just work 3 more years and do that. And the answer is, yes, you could. All right. So really,
there's
what do you want to do here?
There's another sort of transition strategy I like to talk about, David, is if you're younger, let's say you're 45 or whatever, right? Or something, and you want to sometimes it might make sense to set up the company so it runs without you. Because if you can do that, my thought is if you're 45, I've got a couple who've done that. If you're 45, they get the company to run without them. They maybe spend 5-10 hours a week in the company, but they're still knocking down $500,000 in revenue.
Yep. That is a beautiful story. So we're saying the same thing here, which is The transition plan doesn't mean you have to sell. It means you've removed yourself from day-to-day activities and company functions. That's a beautiful outcome where you can work remotely, you can work 1 to 2 days a week. And guess what? In every company I've worked with, only one person has wanted to leave entirely. Because guess what? And everybody listening will identify with this. They like what they do. They're good at what they do. So let's just create an opportunity for you to do what you do best. 1 to 2 days a week, opening new business opportunities, networking, developing clients. That's what they're good at. That's why they've built these companies. So can we create an opportunity for you to work 1 or 2 days a week, remove yourself from day-to-day functions, and do what you do best? What a goal is that?
And I've seen that done successfully.
Yeah.
Another question would be, there's some statistic, maybe you can help me out with David, that I'm going to guess something like 80% of the people that sell their businesses regret they sold them. Isn't that some number like that?
There is in the Exit Planning Institute, another great question. Exit Planning Institute, you could do Exit Planning Institute, I think .org. 79% of business owners who sell their business regret that decision 1 year later. So almost 80%. And part of this goes back to, if you're looking at an active transition plan, where are you putting all that energy? You know, you have raised this company, you have all these vital relationships, not only with employees, but with clients, subcontractors, and suppliers. Where are you now redirecting that passion?
Right.
So
well, my wife said she won't let me retire because she says, I couldn't stand you if you did, right? Because
you got a
my
point.
obsession is building a company. And I'm sorry, but golf is not that exciting. I can only go do so much skiing. Traveling gets boring after about 2 months or so. So the question is, I think, not what are you retiring from, but what are you retiring to?
Yes.
And where you're going to isn't where you're better than where you're coming from. I don't think you should go there.
Look, I think we're in a similar ballpark. So I'm in my late 60s. I'm not stopping. I like what I do. It's engaging. I get to work with good people. I'm passionate about it. And you're doing the same thing. I mean, it's engaging, the people you get to work with, the outcomes you get to see. What would you be doing? What would I be doing otherwise?
Well, to me, the most, there's the longevity studies. I'm sure you watched it. There's a couple on Netflix, Living to Be 100, whatever it was. And the number one thing that keeps people alive is purpose.
Interesting.
And if you don't have purpose, most people just die. I mean,
yeah.
That's something like 4 or 5 years after retirement. What do most people do? They die. Well,
yeah,
a lot of it has to do with purpose, because purpose is what keeps you alive. I think the guy, if I remember Schultz, the guy that wrote Snoopy, I think once he retired, he died a year later or something like that. Because if you have a purpose in life, especially entrepreneurs, their purpose in life has been to serve others in some way. Maybe it's their clients, maybe it's their employees. It's usually not about money if they're good at it. So if it's not about money, it's about purpose. And if your purpose in life is helping others and you found a way of serving them through your company, then what are you going to do when you quit? You just going to go play golf? I mean, it could get pretty boring.
I can give you a better analogy, or to complement what you're just saying. Okay, so you're going to play golf 3 times a week. There's what, 120 hours in a week? All right, we've just done 20 hours. You've got 100 hours left. What are we doing with the next 100 hours? And I can do this simple little drill down, which really highlights what you just said. And there's the Blue Zones, a Netflix series.
Yeah, that was it. The Blue Zones. That's
the Blue Zone, and they've gone to places where people are living to 100, and it's 4 things were key, and I really resonated: diet and exercise, which is certainly understandable. The next 2 were purpose and community. And when we think of what we're doing in construction, it is a community. And the purpose is everything you just said. All right. How we're working not only with our employees, but with our clients, the relationships we have. When I left construction and got more into the consulting side, somebody said, what do you miss? And it was the relationships, because the tradespeople, the suppliers, we got to know each other. And I knew if I had a problem, they would step up. If they needed money, I could work with them. There's something really vital about all that.
And the thing is, purpose, the question is why you get up in the morning, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a good reason to get up, sooner or later you won't. It's like, because,
Wow.
it's like it could be serving others. I mean, I've even heard stories, David, about people that hate their job, but when they quit, they still die because hating their job gave them something to do, right? At least
Yes.
they got excited about complaining about their job. So, I'm not, I mean, I think out of Blue Zone, I think none of those companies of Blue Zone, retirement was even a word in the language.
No.
And
And, they're 70, 80, 90 years old. They're healthy. They're still contributing. Let's I'll do the same.
so I'm going to suggest a new name for your company. Okay. This is just
Please.
me. Okay. I think it should say, contractor transition strategy, or because the difference between owning a job and owning a business, I'm sure you've heard this, David, is if you can leave and things continue, you own a business. If leave and things stop, you own a job, right? So I think all construction owners should own a business. But again, I don't advocate like quitting and leave unless you have like a passion, like a ministry or, a nonprofit or, saving the whales or something, right? If you have a passion in life that your company is getting in the way of, great, then you should go to your passion. But if your company is your passion, I would suggest you don't sell it, that you work with David or somebody to figure out how to transition it so you have a life balance. I mean, I'm an example. I spend 2 to 3 hours a day, sometimes 4, just doing me, between exercise and running and all that kind of stuff. I got lots of time to do that. And I get up at 4 in the morning and I'm done by 1 or 2, right?
Yeah.
But why would
Yeah.
I get up at 4:30 in the morning? I have to have something to do. So it's like, I think that's the most important thing, is having a reason to get up in the morning. And if your company is it, then you need to figure out some way to not necessarily exit your company, but exit the part where your life is not in balance.
I couldn't agree more. It's when I hear that people have closed the doors. And a great story, I was working with a contractor in the Bay Area, very affluent area, very successful business, 30 years. And I went to see him. I'm walking to his office. It's very quiet, which is unusual. Went back and sat in his office. He said, "Did you see how quiet it was?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I announced this morning, my wife and I spoke last night. We have everything we need. And we decided to close the doors in 6 months." And I said, "What?" He said, "We're closing the doors in 6 months. We had a production meeting this morning. I let my established professional project managers know that we're closing the doors in 6 months. Does anybody want to take over?" And I said, "Did anybody step up?" He said, "No," because they're not owners.
I had the same thing happen. I had 2 companies in the Bay Area. We're being nameless at this point. Company A was doing 10 million in the Bay Area, and he sold it for $1.5 million to 2 million to his
Wow.
clients, which went well, right? Somebody else was doing 4 million, 5 million, been in business for 30 years. He had some good real estate investments, especially in San Francisco. He didn't have to work anymore. So he just closed the doors and said, "I'm done." He did the same thing. He said, "Wait, to anybody want the company?" Everybody said, "No way." So he just shut the doors and he was done.
Just a shame. I got to tell you, when he told me this, for about 45 seconds, Paul, I thought to myself, I could move to the Bay Area. I could step into a reputable company, generating 3 to 4 million in annual revenue. But then common sense. I didn't want to move to the Bay Area. I live in Colorado. So then, common sense got back in again. But for that 45 seconds, what a great opportunity for the right person.
So I think, in a conclusion here, that I would say, one, retirement, in my idea, is a bad option if your passion is your company, but you need to figure
Yes.
out some way to get the right life balance so your company doesn't get in the way of pursuing your other passions, maybe travel, maybe, community service, whatever other passions happen to be, shouldn't get in the way. And the idea that you're going to have somebody buy it is fantasy land. Just
Yep.
give it up, unless it's somebody within the company or your own employees. Otherwise, I think it's just never going to happen. So
And this can be done. I mean, the reality is, set a goal where in 5 years I'll be working 2 days a week. You can
right.
do it. Guess what? It takes some planning, takes some effort, but you can do it. And what a great goal, 3 to 5 years to be working 2 days a week, still generating, $300,000 to $500,000, in net revenue, happy employees, great clients. Why
Well, I mean,
not?
the two things it requires, one is if you need to get $500,000 on your investments, you better have at least 5 to 8 million in cash or an asset someplace.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
And the other one is if you don't have a better purpose in their business, you better find one or just keep it. So David, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So contractorexitstrategy.com. You can go to the website, and there's actually an exit assessment, online exit assessment, and it will tell you where you are in potential exit planning. It's a simple little 20-minute little evaluation, little checklist. Then I get back with people and we review those areas that need attention. It's a neat little tool.
Cool. Well, I recommend you call David. Those people listening to this are all going to exit your business is guaranteed. You just when and how you don't know. Okay.
And a lot better if you do it on your terms, not on somebody else's.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, David. I appreciate having you.
Paul, I enjoyed it. Let's do it again.
Sounds good.